Everyone, welcome to today's video. So today's video, I wanted to talk about why I think the Division 1 was successful. Now, the Division 2 right now is yet to still prove anything regarding the Division 1, and I'll point out to some of these things as we go through the video. So if you're listening, if you're driving, or if you're just, maybe just listening, I appreciate you so much for even tuning in. Thank you. This video is probably going to span a little longer, so thanks for your patience in advance. So the Division 1, when it released, was in a very terrible state. In fact, it was in a worse state than the Division 2. It was buggy, broken, and people were exploiting, a lot of the systems like crazy. The Division 1 release was a mess. It was such a mess that Massive knew that they probably would never ship another game to the market successfully if they did not step in to fix this. So they did. They started out a lot of, pathways doing state of the games to bring the community in and start to figure out what all was going on. They had to quickly backtrack and make sure that things, were in place, because the Division 1 sold very well. It's probably Ubisoft tags it their fastest selling game. This is what they put in one of their, annual call meetings, earnings call thing. And they put it together in a graphics and, sent it out there. But one of the really interesting things was, if you were in the community at that time with the Division 1, not only were they doing state of the games and communicating a lot of things, there was a relationship that existed between the community and the developers. This relationship was not exclusive to YouTubers or streamers. No, it was a relationship that was extended into even gamers within the community, as people who played and enjoyed the Division game. And it was not just, by they were saying it, it was with evidence as well. Now, you could say that they were doing it to save their hide because they were working on Division 2. You can say they were doing it for PR purposes. However you want to say it, a lot of the actions that they took were actions that you basically will most likely never see many game studios actually take. Imagine having a gaming studio fly in people who play their games, who have no YouTube channel, no streaming presence at all, to show them what you're working on. And then all they have to do is just go back home and just wait under the NDA. And you will not gain any more exposure from that person at all. They're ETF members. There's an ETF member from the first ETF that's a friend of mine on PSN. Doesn't have a YouTube channel, doesn't stream. In fact, one day I think we had match made. And I saw his name and I said, yo, were you not in the ETF? And he said, yeah. So we added each other as friends on PSN. And he doesn't have any kind of exposure. And he was, part of the people that went in to see the first ETF. This to me was a step in the right direction to actually start out community relations. And I think this was the birth of a successful Division 1 franchise over the course of the time that the Division 1 remained active. It was a player-developer interaction and feedback loop that brought the game to where it was, or where it currently is, because Division 1 is still active. Now, let's look at the relationship right now with the community and the Division 2 compared to the relationship with the community in the Division 1 and the developers then. If we look back at it, and this is for people who were in the community and very active, if you are new, or if you maybe played the Division 1 on the tail end, then you basically won't necessarily kind of sense what I'm talking about. But if you look at the relationship now, I think that relationship has basically gone sour in many cases. Now, I could point fingers, but it's not going to help anything. In fact, if you think about the release of the Division 2, it was actually released in a good state. But there was talk about Endgame during the marketing that didn't seem to fulfill that. So that was already a problem. They said, oh, we're going to be looking at this from an Endgame first. And by the time people reached Endgame, there wasn't the content that had been promised. But then that content actually came eventually. And then skills were kind of in a weird place. And then skills came. And then they did all these patches and nerfs and nerfs and nerfs and all that down the road. And by then, Marco Style had left because there was a section of the community that was calling, saying he was burned out. And he didn't feel the Division 2 was bringing much to the table. So he parted ways. And by then, after that, it just started to slide slowly but surely downhill. The relationship between the devs and the community starting to go bad. Now, one thing that the developers basically did not pay attention to was striving to keep this relationship, linked on. In fact, what we saw was banter on Twitter between devs and community members that basically did not go well. So already, not only did they have a game that depended on the on the community, there were already these weird issues going on. And then after a while, things started to seem to get better. But instead of the developers actually tightening the relationship with the community, they didn't do that. Yes, there was an ETF that was kind of like, down low or low key or whatever, but it didn't seem to utilize that ETF to be able to do what the ETF in the Division 1 actually did. So again, there was this dryness. And then Warlords of New York, which came out, and on its merits, I thought was a decent patch, it came out buggy nonetheless. And this, I think, was the opportunity for those who may have wanted to see this game fail or benefit from this game being a buggy mess. They struck. They found the angle and they decided to go for it and inserted more poison into the community. And that's when all relations dilapidated. In fact, what we saw were temporary bans and rollbacks, and then even a tightening of the terms of service that Ubisoft has. To me, I think we are seeing the exact opposite of why the Division 2 is struggling right now. I think the Division 2 should be thriving, and it's not even based on content. I think it should be thriving based on the current game that it is right now. Imperfect as it may be, the Division 1 is not perfect either. But I think the Division 2 should be thriving in its second year. This is its second year that it's going into, and I think it definitely should be thriving. But the reason it's not doing so is because that relationship is not there. And even a lot of the people who generated hype in the onset and the release, many of them are usually streamers or people who just, engage in the game to be able to garner views and garner traffic from it. No, shade towards them. It's just their jobs. And so they go to where there's relevance and they go to where, their views. And so they usually leave. And that's what I think a game like this requires its community for, to be able to continue to hold that relevance even while the game is not getting the biggest exposure from some of the bigger content creators. I think it's a better tactic than trying to even pay anybody to stream the game. Not saying they paid anybody, even though they paid some people in Division 1 time, whatever. But this is where I think the Division 1 was successful. There was a relationship between the development team and the community. Right now, there isn't one. And if Massive really wants to build or rebuild this relationship and put together whatever pieces they can, they need to reestablish that contact. Yes, the terms of service from Ubisoft was actually really tough, but it is actually similar to the terms of service across the board. I think people just noticed it more because it seemed to make the people who had been given a lot of negative feedback squeal a little bit. They kind of screamed like, whoa, what's going on? But it's just industry standard. Plus, we also saw what happened in the Last of Us community. I mean, we're not at that point yet in the Division community, so we can at least breathe a sigh of relief. At least we're complaining about balancing and all that. We're not complaining about the entire premise of the game. I mean, we're not even at that point. Far be it from this community, hopefully, knock on wood. But at the same time, Massive can do this by at least starting to show what it takes to actually bring content. Is Massive able to do a short documentary talking to us about how long or the amount of work it took to deploy Warlords of New York, the challenges they may have faced in development, the obstacles, the reason they even made Warlords of New York? Why did they even make Warlords of New York? Are they going to sit down and kind of do a documentation through the studio and so that we can see people that are working on different aspects of the game that we appreciate? Yes, we see Bruce, we see Yannick, we used to see Thailander and the others, but it'll be nice for us to see some of the arts people and the environmental designers as well. No offense to you guys that do all the gameplay mechanics. We're excited that we got, to hear from you and all that, but I think there's the empathetic side of human beings that'll be happy to see and learn and know who makes their games and the challenges that they actually face to make their games. Not just showing us them, but actually talking about what it means to deliver content to the community. Are we going to hear anything from the team who made the hardcore mode and why they made the hardcore mode, what they were planning to achieve? I think this is where Massive has the opportunity. Now, it's going to take a lot because they've taken a lot of heat from the community in the past few months. That is for sure. I don't even think this idea would even fly. I mean, to me, if I were on the other side of, if I was on the receiving end of this, I'll probably have no reason or no motivation to want to even do that. Because to be very, honest, this community has really beaten down on their development team. I mean, and I think that's probably one of the reasons I've decided to take on this stance that I've taken on, because I try to put myself in, in the other shoes sometimes, and sometimes I probably wear the shoes far too long. So I've seen some of your comments saying, why don't you agree with the community once in a while? Quit this fanboying and all that. And I say, you also probably have something that you enjoy and you're a fan of, and something that you would be happy to highlight the good parts, even though you would admit that there are bad parts too, and that there are parts that are imperfect. It doesn't mean it's going to stop you from highlighting the good parts. But I think this is how the Division 2 can become a success. It will take a small community, but as long as there are people playing it, I think it's a perfect opportunity to be able to do it. They're dedicated players. My Discord continues to hum with Division servers and people constantly talking about this game 24 hours a day. I'm a part of many Discord servers in the community, and people are constantly talking about the game. So there is a community that can benefit from this and appreciate this. And I think there's even a community out there who, when they see the difficulties and the challenges of, deployment of content, they'll probably be more appreciative of the game, and yes, there'll probably still be a cynical, context, people who don't care, people who continue to make jokes on, different platforms like Reddit, but that's in every game. If you go to the Destiny's Reddit, you're going to see the exact same thing as well. It's not even different from the Division right now. But at the same time, I feel like those people who hope for the game to be better, I feel like they're going to benefit from something like that. So, they're Massive. Get to work. Reestablish that relationship with your community. That's why you're here. You're here to serve gamers. I know it could be a very terrible thing sometimes, but it might be what this game needs to push perhaps another Division game in the future. Thanks for watching the video. Peace.